Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Read Room. And I have a very, very special guest with me today, the lovely Lynn. Hello, my gorgeous wife. How are you?
Hello. Hello, Mark. Hello.
Say,
I'm
say,
good today.
say, saying
Huh?
hello to the people that, for some reason, follow me and sort of pay
Hello,
attention to me
you
for some reason.
apparently 2,000 gorgeous, amazing, if you're out there watching wherever, then hello. Thank you and hello.
Yeah. So today you're bringing us a video,
Hmm.
um, and I had vaguely heard of them because I've vaguely heard of everything, but not really looked into them. And that's
Mm,
girl defined. And so,
mhm.
um, what about this made you want to bring it and share it with the readers and why is this a thing that you are doing?
Um, I found them through just they've kind of been mocked online fairly extensively for their
Haven't we
content.
all? Haven't we
Yes,
all?
and they've got to suffer through it like everybody else. But I found them through other people making jokes about them. But when you actually go
Mhm.
and watch their videos and dissect everything they're saying, there's a lot of very not pro-feminist, very anti-feminist, very
Mm.
anti-trans, anti-everything rhetoric. So they're expressing the values of biblical womanhood. So
Right.
they're trad wives, but they
Mhm.
kind of want to appeal to a broader audience. So they've kind of given this persona of being very sort of accessible girl next door, of like
Okay.
every girl
So
kind
they're
of
not
thing. I think
th we're not fundamentalists, we're just
no.
fun,
Yeah,
kind
that
of.
sort of vibe, like, they're trying to make it a
Okay,
safe space. Like, it's cool, it's fine, and you should be working
okay,
towards being yeah, and they look innocent enough, but, I mean, just 2
alright.
seconds in, you would know better.
Oh,
And there's a lot of
okay, alright.
allegations. I don't wanna start bringing out stuff that's alleged because there's backstories to both of these people that I've heard that yeah.
So, allegedly, they've had
Mhm.
some real problematic behavior, is that sort of what you're saying?
Yes. Correct.
Okay, are we talking problematic as in, problematic for certain members of the more, progressive side, or problematic as in, like, problematic for Christians?
Probably more problematic for Christians and the people in their lives
Oh,
in particular. Sorry, I'm just gonna close that. Um,
oof,
I I found out that one of their husbands might have sort of been roped into a lot of things. So for trad wives, they're actually very dominant in their relationships because this is what they're selling. And I think they're selling a
right,
sort of a grift of types, and the husbands are kind of like part of that package, and the children become part of that package of we're this
mm,
wholesome Christian we're trying to make a wholesome Christian, quiverful type
mm,
family, and
yeah,
giving
right,
that
right,
vibe of good white Christian women with their husbands and kids, and it's kind of not working out that way for them, but they're not
okay.
endearing themselves to anybody because of that.
Which is
So
odd because the trad wife sort of thing is being submissive to your husband, not dominant
right,
over him.
yeah,
So
and both of them are quite dominant personalities, and I think they might
there's
get
nothing.
that from their mother, which is fine.
Yeah,
I'm not
that's
saying
fine,
that they can't really, but
but
I think
you're
it's that
pro
yeah.
but as trad wives, you'd certainly be promoting, listen and do what your husband says.
Well, you would think so, but they're not kind
Yeah,
of living that behavior, which is interesting
okay. Well,
because 'cause they're
we've
the
got the video
businesswomen.
here.
Yeah.
Right, they're probably the money earners. That must be,
Yeah,
while telling
yeah.
everybody, "Hey, the man should be the money earner." That's it's
Yeah.
always okay, sure. You do you,
Okay,
trad
honey, yeah,
wife,
you
you
do.
do you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But I do
Mhm.
have the video here, and this is the one
Mhm.
we're gonna is it wrong to not want to have kids? So,
Mm.
is that so basically we're talking, should you ought to want to have kids as a woman, I presume? I mean, I don't know if
Only
they're
as a woman.
applying this
No,
they're not
it's
applying this to
only
men either.
no, absolutely not.
Oh,
Men cannot have
oh.
babies, men cannot like, if that's
No,
what
well,
you mean.
no, no, that's not what I mean. I mean,
Oh, sorry.
you
Yeah.
know, what I mean is, like, if a man goes, "No, really don't want kids,"
Mhm.
is that wrong as well?
Probably,
Any
but I
man?
think that they're
Okay.
targeting yeah, that I mean, they would probably be encouraging you to make your partner want to have kids, maybe. I haven't seen everything, but I do know that it's that the title's kind of misleading. And I don't think they
Okay.
talk about what men want in a family. I think they just assume all men want to be fathers. I
Well,
think
I'll
that's
speed them up a
their
little
vibe.
bit because usually they're a bit slow, but we'll see
Yeah,
how we go.
they put them on chipmunk
But thank
mode.
you for bringing this to my attention. It should be a lot
Mm,
of fun. So thank you so
mhm.
much. And yeah, it's wonderful to have you on the channel as well. It's just
Thank you.
awesome.
Is it wrong if you do not want to have kids? It's been really interesting because I just had my second baby. I have a little boy and now a little girl.
Good for
Mhm.
you.
Mm.
What?
Pigeon pair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So right
Okay.
off the bat, they're probably gonna be really positive about kids in general.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a weird flex. That's all.
Mhm,
You know.
mhm.
Okay.
It's just interesting that people have assumed like two is like already plenty, and you already have a boy and a girl. So you're absolutely done when I tell them, like, oh, I mean, we don't know if we can have more, but we would love to have more. They're like, oh, wow, okay, you know. And so I want to
Mhm.
talk about not how many you should have, but is it wrong if you don't want to have any at all? Or is it wrong if you only want to have two? You got your
Oh, so it's not
Yeah.
just people that don't want it. It's like people that stop at the two children.
So
Yeah.
it's like what's the nuclear family? Is the 2.5 kids, that
Right. Right.
standard thing, and that would be
Yeah.
sensible to anybody, but these girls are that duggery, quiverfully kind of raised that Christian army. They've got that energy. I don't think they're bringing it to the
Okay.
table.
Well, I mean, a lot of the time it's based on the Bible's sort of go forth and what is it? Go forth and propagate kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
they really some take
multiply
it
the
seriously.
exceedingly, yeah.
Right, right. But
Go for it.
I must admit, I have run into those who think, soldiers for the army of Christ, and it's like,
Mm,
wow.
yeah, yeah.
the mindset of our culture today, like you said, really is one of like, if you choose to have kids at all, be sure to only have one or two. And like, you just, I've seen articles of people who are shocked, like when Chip and Joanna Gaines from Fixer Upper, when they had their fifth child, I saw multiple articles of people like, how could they? Like, this is irresponsible to have so many children, like, all these things. And I'm like, this is crazy. We are living in a culture where it's not.
Uh,
Mm,
I,
yeah,
the cost of
right.
living is going up and up. It's
Mhm.
nice that you can afford that, but sort
Yep.
of a lot of
Sh
families can't.
No. They've got to live within their means to look after the kids they have. They're not gonna
Right.
Yeah, it's not practical, but if you've got the
Uh,
lifestyle that can facilitate 10 kids, there's nothing stopping you, but some
but
people just
uh,
don't.
well, I feel like they're sort of judging people that can't afford that. There's plenty of families
Mm,
that can't afford another kid, so they don't
mhm,
want another kid because
mhm,
it's not. So if you want to give a child a good life, the more kids you have, the kind of worse life they have because you only have
mhm.
so much to go
Yep,
around, especially in America where
yep,
there's less subsidies for
yep,
single parents and stuff.
right.
Yeah.
But their attitude is, and that's what I found out about the Quiverful movement, they raise the daughters to be the surrogate parents. So the more kids they have in the house, the older children then become the default parents, so they can go away and look after the babies, and the parents basically the mother just becomes a baby person, and she just looks after the younger
Oh.
children. So as the daughters grow up to be
Mm,
these girls' ages, or 19, 20, or
mm,
even earlier
mm.
than that, they become the mothers of the younger children. So they're the ones telling them how to run the household.
Mhm.
The mother herself doesn't actually end up being mother to every single child. So that's how
Right.
they operate their household. I don't think that's exactly what these girls particularly think, but the attitude is
That does occur.
the
Yeah.
older kids, which is why the Duggars situation happened. The oldest child, the
Mm.
boy, ended up sort of being a secondary patriarch, I think, and
Yeah.
that led to a lot of problems. I think they just think, "Oh, we'll just raise the children to become parents," and they become
Mm.
parentified, basically.
Yeah, parentification is
Mm.
is a problem. Yeah.
Which is sad in its of itself.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't get
Not
to have
like
a
you look
childhood.
at
No, no, it's basically taken away from them.
Mm.
Horrible.
our parents' generation, the generation before that, like our grandparents' generation, it was a lot more normal for people to get married young, for people just to accept, like, yeah, getting married, growing up, that's part of life, part of the seasons. You have kids, and most people had more than one kid, had more than 2 kids, like 4 or 5 kids, like bigger families were just the norm. But we live in a new era where kids are a take it or leave it. They're viewed as an accessory, they're viewed as a burden, and the mindset has shifted.
So have they actually investigated why that is? Like why that is happening, or have they just said no, it's not good kind of thing?
I don't think they've looked into it like from a generational perspective. Of course, our grandparents would. I mean, they gave birth to the baby boomer generation. That was a
Correct. Yeah.
prerogative back then. We don't have that prerogative now, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
They want
and
to
sort of
create that attitude.
well, I mean, the imperative was there because a war had just killed off a significant percentage of the population. That
Right.
was the thing, and so there
Mhm.
was a lot more incentive to have large kids just because of the drop
Mhm.
in population, but also
Mhm.
because there's a lot more opportunity when the population is lower.
They're not thinking in those. I don't think they're thinking in those terms. I don't know if
Mm,
these girls specifically promote it, but I get that feeling of, well, we've got to keep the particular race of. I mean, I'm probably imprinting a bit on them here, but I don't think they're acting like the Catholics, but they're evangelicals. They're just like, well, you just keep having
right.
kids, and it's like that's
Yeah.
irresponsible. Yeah.
Need to take a deep dive on this and really challenge our perspectives. Like, are they biblical? Where is our mindset coming from this on this?
And it's really interesting because I have seen this reel. It's kind of gone viral, and there are multiple people creating different sorts of this, but it's basically of a woman standing, in front of the camera, and she's kind of dressed really classy, maybe kind of sexy. She's definitely before she is married. And so it shows that she's just like, I guess, thinking about the idea or imagining what married life would look like. And so she has a wedding ring and she's standing there just loving her life. And then she puts the wedding ring on, and all of a sudden the camera flashes to her like cleaning up all her kids' toys. And then she takes the ring off, and then she's back to like her single life. The little video ends with her taking off the wedding ring and throwing it in the trash can. And people love it. You should read the comments on it. They're like, yes, this is so great. This is so true. Like, oh my goodness, and it's sad to me that is the world that we live in, where those are the kinds of videos that go viral because people are like, yes, having kids, it's such a drain. You lose yourself, you lose your life.
Yes, queen. Sorry.
Well, see, the thing is, like, if I presume this is some kind of YouTube video. If you post a video, like, if you could, about how, train sets are fantastic, you'll get
Mm,
amazing comments on that. Like, just
yeah, they
anything
don't
will get
understand the algorithm at all.
right. Like, I'm, I don't know why sort of having a video liked by,
Mhm.
a lot of people is somehow
Well,
grounds for
yeah,
saying it's the entire population of Earth doing this. It's
yeah,
very strange.
they're very threatened by the child-free movement, as it's called now. They're very threatened
Okay.
by the notion of that. And if you go into child-free Reddits and chats and Instagram comments,
Mhm.
it's always, "You're gonna grow up alone, you're gonna, like, you'll have nobody at the end, why don't you just keep your cats, you spinster loser?" It's really demonized by some of these people to want to be
Right, right.
child-free and not
Mm.
even married. If you choose that, it does not harm society for you to do that. But they have
No,
this false notion that children will be there at the end to take care of you, and that's not ever true or not always true.
sounds like when they said they're not living biblically. I mean, are they talking to Christian women or all women or
I think it's all women because it's mostly attacking non-Christian women who have not chosen to become a married
mothers?
housewife, and they're
Right,
sort of,
right.
yeah, criticizing it, which they're well within their rights to do because,
Um,
yeah.
but I would say an atheist care about living. I mean, if you're living biblically,
Mm,
in my opinion, you're also stoning people to death and taking buying slaves from your neighbors. Like
right, yeah,
biblically, when they say living, I mean, in the Bible, you could have more than one wife as well.
yeah.
So
They
this whole idea of living biblically is
mhm.
weird.
They've taken their attitude from a very specific part of the Bible, but I can't remember which one. So
Okay.
they do cherry pick a bit, I think, with their attitude. Like
Yeah.
they really haven't, you know, examined what polygamy is. They haven't examined how women were treated biblically.
Right.
Yeah, it's all very shallow. Yeah.
Right. Right. So they haven't done a deep dive, is what you're saying.
No,
I get you.
I don't feel like they've really examined what biblically means.
I just feel like if a Christian's like, well, you're not living biblically, it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know why I would. That's very,
No,
very strange thing.
yeah.
Like, how sad that we view children as such a burden and
Yes.
such a, like, we're losing ourselves and it's just the worst, you know? I mean,
So important as Christian women that we aren't passive about pursuing an intentional biblical mindset, because we can't help but hear the world's narrative, hear the world's message, like soak up the worldview of culture. We can't help it because we live in it day in and day out. So much of what we consume, so much of what we see, that is the worldview that
For
we're
sure.
soaking up. So if we aren't intentionally, like we like to use this analogy, like swimming against the current, like we're all flowing down the current of culture naturally. And unless we as Christians aren't intentional to say, I am
Totally.
going to swim against this current by digging into God's word, reading biblically gospel-based resources, curriculum, like studying, growing from Christian leaders who are wiser and smarter and trying to understand, what does God say about this? Where is his heart in this? Then we are naturally going to latch on to the mindset of culture. And
Where are these Christian leaders who are wiser and smarter? I don't know.
I think they
But
don't want to say they are themselves, but they want to be leaders, but they don't want to say they're leaders.
well, they're not allowed to. Well, in
No,
the Bible,
no,
it says that a
right.
woman is that I believe it says that the man is the head of the household and the woman, like Jesus is the head of the church, basically. So
Yes,
you're supposed to
yes,
follow the man, which is,
right.
what if the man absolutely sucks?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, but again, they're not living biblically. If girl defined is their business, that is
right.
what they profit from. They're
Mm,
an industry. They write books. They create materials. The stuff that they're talking about to educate people, they make themselves. They think it's their responsibility to create that material. So
right.
how is that living biblically? I'm
I'm
all
sure
for
they
you
have.
running your business.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they have some loophole that because it's for God, then it doesn't count in some way. I'm
Yeah,
sure
that's
they have
probably how
some.
they gymnastics
Yeah.
their way over that, you think?
And so here's the thing, and it's not like modern culture's going, oh, having kids is bad kind of
No.
thing. It's not really saying that. It is just a subculture of society that says, hey, we don't want kids.
Mhm.
That's saying, oh, I'm swimming against the current. That's fine. There's no problem with that. If you want to have like 12 children, it's okay. I get the idea that somebody goes, oh, well, you had 12 kids, that's just irresponsible.
Mhm.
But it's important to realize that those 12 kids are going to get 1/12 of the care you would give one.
Yeah.
That when it becomes that large, it's a
Mhm.
problem. But
Right.
I'm in two minds about it. I think at
Mm.
that point it is kind of irresponsible, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm not going to throw shade at anybody for
No,
wanting to have kids in
no.
general. That's
Yeah.
fine. I don't.
Like, and, we're not gonna have a one-child policy anytime soon. Like, I don't think
Oh,
any
of course not.
country is gonna, especially America. But they
Mm,
create these families, and then they become communities unto themselves, and they homeschool. So
yeah,
it becomes, like, for lack of a better word, incestuous anyway, because these families tend to stick together and propagate their own. Yeah, I don't see people coming into this unless you're sort of already a part of it
mhm,
growing up. I don't
yeah,
see them appealing to someone like me, because I've already made up my mind about what I wanna do. They're not gonna change
yeah.
my mind at any point. Yeah,
Nor should they.
nor should they. No.
And there's a resource that you can actually get for free called Set My Heart, 7-day devotional for drawing close to Jesus. And that is something that we need day in and day out. This resource, if you're watching on YouTube or Instagram, I'm holding up a picture, but you can get this free by becoming a supporter of Girl Defined over on our platform, patreon.com/girl.
I'm sorry. They
Mhm,
said it was free, but you've
mhm.
got to join Patreon to get it.
I think you can send your email through the website, but yeah, maybe they do paywall. I don't know how much of that
Uh,
they paywall, but if they've
Well, then
paywalled
that's
that, then
not
yeah, it's not
free.
free. No, they again, it's it's free
I,
if you join Patreon.
I'm going to try if I can get it. Hang on a sec.
Yeah, you might be able to get a couple of things. I just didn't wanna give them my email address, to be honest.
Oh, that's true. I'll give them a fake
Give them a
one that,
burner,
that I
yeah.
don't use. Yeah, a burn. Yeah, that's it.
You
Girl
can
Defined.
see that they're kind of setting it up themselves, like, they're not pointing you in
Yes.
the direction of other material, it's purely their material.
Excuse me. They said to go to Christians wiser and
Oh, sorry, is that not one of theirs?
Apparently not. No, it's probably their husbands, but
It could be. He's
could
affiliate.
be.
I don't
Could be.
And it's a place where we have a small, amazing, powerful community of sisters who love Girl Defined, who love conversations like this, who appreciate this countercultural biblical perspective on relevant issues. And you guys want us to continue on. You don't want to see Girl Defined go away. So many of you have said, hey, I'll support Girl Defined. I can afford $3 to $4 a month to support your podcast and your videos. And when you sign up to become a patron, we create resources every month and give them to you for free as a way to help you grow in your walk with Christ and a way to say thank you for getting behind us and supporting the work of Girl Defined. So
Mhm.
But that's not free. If you have to get me on
No.
Patreon, that's
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
I know you're thinking of Patreon a subscription, and then you don't pay
Yeah,
extra.
that's
But
true.
that's like Netflix saying, what's free on Netflix, but you're paying a subscription. Like,
Right. That's not free, really.
yeah. So you'll probably find that they'll
It's
be start doing a lot of this.
it's really a Patreon perk, but
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. Anyway.
Just been like printed out on the computer, so it's probably
Yeah,
a PDF or something. That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
I mean, that's annoying to somebody that's actually published a book, and I'm gonna drop that. Published a
Yeah.
book. Actually, you published a few books, come to think of it.
I
Now that
did, and I did put a tiny bit more effort into it than that. They're not
I-
brilliant, but
Yep.
I did spend a bit more time than.
How do you rate the cover? Because it doesn't.
Oh, yeah, it's simple. It's simplistic.
You can
It's
see the printer lines where the
yeah,
printer
you
was
can see the
kind of running out
margins.
of
Yeah,
ink.
they haven't right. Yeah, that color print has really
Uh-huh.
served its purpose. So
On its last legs.
yeah,
Maybe it should follow the biblical path. I
yeah.
don't know. I don't know
But
how a
they
printer.
do. They have. To be fair, they have published professional books, but again, it would have been through a Christian publisher, and they did not
Yeah.
sell very well. They had to
Did
beg
you ever
people to
think
buy
of going
copies.
through a Christian publisher?
I kind of accidentally did with that person that I worked with. So
Oh, really?
interestingly, that publishing company, when my book was coming out, a devotional was coming out at the same time. So I think the
Uh,
publisher was Christian, but it wasn't a Christian publisher.
which book was that?
My first book, the novella.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I became sort of Instagram friends with a Christian woman, very devout Christian woman who was writing a devotional who was published by the company that I worked with. So that's how I found out about devotionals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what
Which
an
is
education. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, that was that. So my book wasn't exactly Christian, as you were well aware, but
Yeah,
she was
pretty well.
bit anti-Christian. But anyway, yeah, that was how I discovered devotionals. Yeah.
one of them, Set My Heart. How to know if he's the one. Another amazing resource for all of you single who are like, I'm not thinking about kids. I'm just trying to figure out if this guy's the one. This is a downloadable guide, free when you become a patron. And then our latest guide is actually one on masturbation. So breaking free from the habit of masturbation. If you've struggled, if you're like, I have this sexual sin, I don't know how to break free. I don't have a biblical guide on how to do this, how to stay free. This is a powerful resource that is one we've never created before. And you can also get that for free by
Why are we breaking free of masturbation? What?
They're very
Like,
anti-porn as well. So they don't
oh,
agree with dating. If your partner has a porn addiction, they strongly advise you to either fix
but
him or leave.
you don't need to break, like, you don't need porn to masturbate. Are they aware of
No,
that? You don't need
no,
porn to masturbate?
it's all sin. They do expressly say that the addiction to porn is a sin and masturbation is a sin, which ironically, when they have now come to their marriages and discussing sex in those marriages, they've had
Right.
to sell themselves as sort of sex positive in a marriage, and they've talked to the wrong people about it because they have grown up thinking that it's only marriage. Like, I think one of them didn't have her first kiss until her wedding day. That's the purity culture.
I think they need to get one of these.
Yes,
This is
absolutely.
probably going to help immensely.
Yeah, yeah. They would probably put a link to their
I'll totally
website to
support that.
this.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's so weird. I mean, when we look at medical experts, they kind of say,
Mhm.
well, doctors agree that it's perfectly healthy and well,
Yeah.
perfectly normal and
Mhm.
healthy to do, kind of thing. Like, it's
Yes,
a healthy
yes.
thing. How to find the right one in their lexicon is, obviously somebody to help you orgasm, because you can't do it yourself.
Yeah, or it'll be more to have to procreate,
Good
obviously, and
Christian
marry
values.
and procreate. And then if you happen to want to, have sex for pleasure, then joke's on you. That's
Wow.
not part of the package. I don't know.
Oh,
They've had to.
that sucks.
Yeah,
That sounds really miserable.
it's yeah. I think they've had to repackage themselves as not being so
I can't help but feel, in
narrow-minded.
my opinion, they're so sort of energetic because they just haven't had an orgasm in years.
Yeah,
That's,
they get a
you
little
know, I
that pent-up feeling. Do you know what I mean?
right. Like, just,
It's
honey,
just
you just
little you need an outlet for this other than God,
right.
because God clearly
Rub
isn't.
one out, honey.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Just get it over with, like, please.
Right now, Taylor Swift is on tour,
Yeah.
and there's been a lot of conversation about her from people who are obsessed with her and people who love her but disagree with her worldview. And it's been interesting to hear how people have said, people who are Christians who really like her, who have come out and said, like, they almost wish she would get married and settle down and like have kids, because then they could continue to relate to her music. And
Could you please just stay out of Taylor Swift's love
Yeah.
life? I mean,
She's a witch.
seriously.
She's a witch. They have to burn her
Oh,
now.
is she?
Because
Oh,
all the girls dancing at her concert were purported to be practicing witchcraft. I'm not kidding.
oh,
That
what?
that that was a thing. There were videos of girls dancing in circles at these concerts and at the
Yeah.
movie screenings, having a good
Witches
time
don't have
dancing.
witches don't have a monopoly on dancing in circles. They do realize this, don't they?
Right, but she's become the modern day witch hunt, and like she's become that threat to the Christian values. That
Okay.
that it's a complete conspiracy theory, but it was said in all sincerity that the Taylor Swift fans were dancing like witches at her concerts.
Oh, I
Yeah.
don't know what that means.
They're
I mean,
trying to demonize her because she was attacking Trump, to be glib, because
yeah, no,
she's so pro-Democrat as well. Yeah.
how dare she have an opinion?
Right. Yeah, as a white woman in America making money. I don't know, no
Well, I
kids.
mean yes, she is, but, at the bare minimum, even white woman making money should be
Mm.
allowed to have a political opinion, like a opinion on politics.
Yeah, well, I
Um,
suppose if she was pro-Trump, they'd leave her alone, or maybe if she was
oh,
pro-Christian,
absolutely.
if she was a Christian singer doing
She is
evangelical
Christian.
singing, which that's if she was their version of Christian, I guess, for lack of a better word. If
Oh,
she
I
was,
gotcha.
promoting that rather than sexuality, then yeah,
So
they would absolutely love her.
fundamentalist
Yeah,
evangelical, yeah.
like and I don't. She's not a fundamentalist as far as I know, but yes, you're right. She is Christian, but she's not promoting Christian values. And I think they're
Mm,
like, why doesn't she just have a husband and kids, and then I can relate to her and listen to her music and not feel bad? She doesn't have to have all
no,
that to. You
no,
can
she
listen to her
doesn't.
music. It's not gonna. Yeah.
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 I mean, it's funny because her music lately has been a lot about people judging her and sort of,
Mm. Hmm.
um, putting her down for being herself, which is kind of very prescient to
Right.
what's actually happening.
Yes. Yes. So they haven't sort of allowed her to be her own type of Christian, or just
Right.
live her life in her own way.
Not a real Christian,
Yeah. Mm-mm. Mhm.
apparently.
in her mid 30s, she's close to my age, and she's back in a new relationship, definitely does not talk about having kids or wanting to settle down and start a family, things like that. It's just interesting. You wonder, do we pick up on some of those cues from these people we idolize, and do we
Yeah.
maybe wish we had that life, or wish we had the glam and all of this, and we're like, yeah, having kids, and it's kind of like, man, that's the bore, like I wish I could be out there so beautiful and
Yeah, just not having kids isn't gonna get you
Mhm.
Taylor Swift's lifestyle kind of thing.
No.
I don't know what they think.
They're stupid because I shouldn't use that word, but Tori Amos, as an example, she grew up as a
They're right.
Methodist. She had a
Yeah.
daughter in the end. She struggled. She ended up having a daughter,
Mm,
Tash. She still lives the life that she wants to live.
right,
I've seen shows, I've gone to concerts with her, she's toured the world, she's
right.
continued to do that. She brought her daughter along. It was all a very supportive environment for that girl.
Environment, yeah.
The girls, yeah. There's nothing. Are they saying that Taylor Swift quits the music business, gets married, and has a ton of kids, and then gives that up? She doesn't have to do that. That's the point.
No. No, she
That's
doesn't.
feminism 101. She can choose to do both.
Yeah,
Like,
sure.
and she has more than enough resources for those
Oh,
kids
yeah.
anyway. She
Yeah,
could support
absolutely.
a village at this point. That's how rich
Yeah,
she is. So
pretty
if
much, yeah.
anyone was going to raise a village, it's her. But
Oh,
she's
yeah.
got cats, and she loves her cats, and she's got a boyfriend now, but they're not getting married because Super Bowl, whatever. But there's nothing to say she can't have both.
It seems that they're not big into choice, like as much as they're probably free
No.
will proponents, they don't sound like they're much into, being able to choose what you're doing.
Is it free will in the confines of the Bible, if that sounds contrary?
They're selling books and courses. Like you
Mhm.
can get a course for
Mm,
advice from Girl Defined. I'm not sure what
mm.
their credentials are to give like advice to anybody about anything,
No.
but apparently it's about discipleship, roadmap, and growth through God. Apparently,
Mhm.
spiritual maturity doesn't happen on its own. Look, you're
No.
the one calling yourself girls, which I was going to
Mhm.
mention is like, I mean, I don't think of these two as girls. They're more grown women
Yes,
than
correct.
girls, kind of thing. I think I'd
Yes.
only sort of call them girls in the colloquial sense, kind of stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, they're selling like enrollment in these courses for $79,
Yeah.
probably US, I would imagine,
Yeah.
and books, kind of thing. So they're definitely
Mhm.
on the shill train,
Yes.
100% on the shill train.
Right. And it's their message is effectively is everything you do in the glory of God or within praise to God.
Yes.
So their video wearing makeup in a God honoring way, that was what got them ridiculed.
Mhm.
So they're obviously wearing makeup, which is
Yeah.
fine, but they're saying you've got to wear that in a sort of an understated, not slutty way, for lack of a better phrase. Like, if you can wear makeup, but you can't look like trash, basically. They're very Abby Shapiro about appearance as well. It's like, we can still dress trendy, but it's got to be in a God honoring way.
Oh, that's
And
so silly.
that's why people laugh at them.
I've noticed. I don't know their names. It's Bethany and something. I saw
Yeah,
Bethany
Kristen
and
or something. Yeah. Bethany's the red shirt and Kristen's the green shirt.
Kristen's eyebrows are very well done. She's
Mhm,
obviously done like the blushes on her cheek. It's
mhm,
all. She's got a ton of mascara on.
mm,
Kristen is a bit. I mean, maybe it's just the pose that she's in, but
mm.
both of them. I don't understand how that's God honoring makeup. I have to get some definitional rule to this.
Yeah, well, that's where I guess where their defined part comes from. We're defining what's God honoring. And I think that's the
Okay.
takeaway that people were criticizing. It's like, we're following God, but we're defining how to do that, how to be womanly in a God honoring way. And that's when people like Trixie Mattel was like, what are you going to fillet your husband in a God honoring way? Like, where do we stop at this God honoring stuff for women? Like,
Well, apparently you're
every,
not going to
yeah,
masturbate in a God honoring way.
no, exactly. So everything they do it's very much in service to God.
That impacts us and that impacts our view.
Yeah.
It's just
And our
something to
view,
think about.
yeah, of beauty, of the body.
Yeah.
Like, we had an episode recently all about that, of like the cosmetic industry and how radically our mindset and our goals have shifted as women, just with all these cosmetic surgeries that we have available, the way we view beauty. But even childbearing is viewed as a negative thing oftentimes, which is why surrogates are so popular now.
Oh
Like,
my
this whole
goodness,
booming
I
business,
know.
we really want to have an episode on that sometime, just talking about that industry,
I
how
literally
that's
saw a
becoming so
billboard,
popular.
like driving down the road.
Yeah.
They really hate surrogates. They
Mm.
really hate them, and I'm not sure why. Like, it's sort
Well,
of,
the Pope's come out against it as well.
well, I understand that there is sort of a contentious issue with people
Mm.
sort of buying fashionable children, kind of thing, by
Mhm,
having a
mhm,
surrogate. But it's
mm,
kind of like they're saying, have kids, grow families, but if
mm,
if you're not fertile, then it
mhm.
sucks to be you, kind of thing.
Yep.
Then don't do that. And there's problems with surrogacy. There's problems with the
Yes.
surrogate getting attached. There's problems
Mhm.
with people sort of
Contesting.
using
Yeah.
contesting. There's problems with the surrogate being used and then sort of
Mm.
just paid off for their services and
Yep.
underpaid and things like that. There's all kinds
Yep.
of issues, but
Mhm.
they seem to be protesting just the fact that people use surrogates.
Yep. Which is, Kristen's now gone on to adopt a Ukrainian baby. So
Right.
again, that, like I showed you that post that she's like,
Mm.
I adopted, but I really wish I'd had my own kid. Like, she can't even get past that. infertility issue of her being unable to have her own child.
What? So Kristen can't have children. That's
She's
the
tried, and I
that's
think
her.
the end result was they adopted, and she
Oh,
posted on Instagram, that was sort of her missive of it gave the vibe of, oh, I'd had to default to adoption because I couldn't, God didn't give me a baby, or God didn't let me have my own children, and I tried and
oh,
tried. So instead of her kind of going, let's address the struggles of infertility, I don't think she's used that
but
as a yeah.
she knows that instead she could have like got her eggs and
I think she did try that.
fertilized them with her husband and had a
I think
surrogate.
Yeah, I think y she probably knew she could do that, but she's saying she wouldn't do it. I don't think
Okay.
she doesn't like the idea of maybe putting her eggs in another woman, so maybe she and her husband didn't wanna do that, but that doesn't mean you get to tell everybody else not to do that. That's just my cursory understanding of what happened with her later on. If you're gonna attack surrogacy, attack how it uses women, attack how it's a use and abuse of women's bodies. Don't attack people for choosing to go
Mm.
down that road, because some of them just want a healthy
Right.
baby. They don't want to design a baby. They got
Yeah.
desperate. I think we should legalize some of those services more, because they are I don't think it's even legal in this country to have a surrogate, from what I understand.
Mhm. But they do
It's
need to be
because
regulated. Yeah.
Yes, it's to stop people going overseas and taking advantage of
Yes.
impoverished
Yeah.
women, which is what they should be saying, not, "Oh, you're
Mm.
awful for, you know, failing to have your own natural birth," which is what Bethany's done, from what I understand. Like, she's propping herself up way too much for having her own
Two
kids.
children. Yeah.
Yeah,
It
and
kind of feels a bit mean in front of her sister to go, "Well, I've got
eh,
two kids," when she
yeah,
can't conceive.
yeah. I they're very tone deaf to that,
Okay.
is from what I
Oh,
gather.
look, I've said it before, like, theists, especially young earth creationists, have no sense of self-awareness, like, just
Mhm,
0 sense of irony at all.
no.
So, yeah.
I went and
Yeah.
saw a billboard like looking for surrogates. I was just like,
Right.
what?
Because women, I mean, and in some cases, it's not just for physical beauty reasons, but in many cases, especially
Yeah,
amongst celebrities,
for sure.
it's that idea like, I don't want having a baby birthing or even a C section to leave scars, to leave, bust open my body. Like, I just
Or-
want to preserve this
Yes.
perfect body, and children will mess that up.
And or to mess up. One of the big ones recently was because she didn't want to have to mess up her work schedule.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
That's
she
a
was
huge
able
one.
to continue on with her life, have
Yeah.
a surrogate. It wasn't for health reasons. It wasn't for any of that. It was literally so that her life wouldn't be inconvenienced with having to bear her own child.
Right. So even the mindset of like children are a burden, don't have them until you have to have them. There's even this mindset of like control of like, okay, well, I want to have children when I'm ready. And then once I'm ready, I'm going to have them on my schedule, my time. It really is still so selfish, all about me. And then if you can afford it and you're apparently a celebrity and you can have someone else carry your baby so that you can continue on in your career. I mean, like, wow, things have taken such a downward spiral, in my opinion.
They're gonna be so upset when artificial wombs are invented. Like,
Absolutely. That probably terrifies them.
yeah, I don't know if that's gonna be, like, around the corner, but,
Mm,
and at some point, we're going to be able to figure out how to,
how
create an
to do
artificial
this. We've
womb.
we're way
Yeah.
closer to that than people realize. Um, well, even, Hannah Reloaded joking that, like, when she gets her artificial womb, or she has a baby as a trans
Mm.
woman, how their heads are just going
Yep.
to absolutely explode.
Oh,
And
yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah.
I think their biggest fear about the trans community is the concept of a man, biological man, whatever, having a baby. It terrifies them. It just and that sounds amazing. That sounds like a huge human
Yeah.
advancement to we should just be doing that. Like, and I don't even agree with I mean, I don't want kids, and we don't want kids, and you know,
Mhm.
we've made that decision. But if a trans woman had the ability to go through that and experience that, isn't that cool in a way?
Yes. Yeah, I
Isn't that
think
kind
that,
of cool?
if we can provide that for people, I mean, it's really just like giving people, options to have a life that is
Mhm.
meaningful to them.
Right.
Um, and I don't see any reason why, this fundamentalist Christian family is going to
Mhm.
produce a better human than a couple
Mhm.
with a trans person,
Yeah.
who love their kid. I don't see
Mhm.
why you have a claim on how to raise a human.
Other than it's based on your book.
Well, and here's the thing, like, from what I've seen here, they're basically saying, "Oh, it's bad to masturbate." That's incredibly damaging to a child. Like,
Yes.
scientists and researchers has told us that is a natural thing that humans do. There's no,
Hmm.
shaming somebody for that is
No.
generally detrimental to their mental health. So,
Hmm.
I think maybe a trans person who is raising their their children to embrace their natural functions and what they
Hmm.
feel and their emotions is treating their kid better than these people are. So I don't see
Yes.
why they
Yeah.
would. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Mm. But it seems like a lot of the time what I run into is, well, we're Christian, so anything Christian is good. Like, you
Hmm.
have to be Christian to be good, and it's
Mm.
sort of a lot of the Christians that I see are not what I would call people with good actions behind them. They
No,
do a
they
lot of
don't
harm.
embody. Yep. But
Right.
again, if they keep putting it under the umbrella thing of God, is that how they kind of justify it? That
Well, yeah, it's kind of that faith that everything done in God's service has to be good.
Mhm.
Um, and then sort of retroactively, if it turns out really horrible, they'll say, well, that wasn't done in God's service, kind of thing. But they
Right.
all think
Yeah.
they're working in God's service. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
which is very much what they're selling.
Right.
They're very Christian soldier mentality.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I run into it a lot, kind of
Mm.
thing. And then when they do something horrible, it's just, well, I sinned, I've just got to get forgiveness, and then,
Mhm. I'll
everything's
recant
fine
on my
again.
deathbed. Yeah. Sorry.
my opinion, a very dark turn. But there is someone out there right now who you may have heard of. Her name is Chelsea Handler. I'm not promoting her. She's a comedian, an actress, doing all sorts of things, but has kind of risen, I don't know, to the top of mind for a lot of Christian women. A lot of conservatives are talking about her because she's getting out there and really promoting what she's calling the child-free life, and all caps on the free. Child-free. Like, you are free. You don't have to have the burden, the weight, the chains of children. And she's an older woman. I don't know how old she is, like 50s or 60s, and she is
I have no idea how old she is.
she is promoting this life. And in fact, recently she came out with her own t-shirt I saw on Instagram, and she's wearing it and promoting it on her shop. And it literally, the front in huge letters, it says child free and crushing it. And her whole mindset is that you don't have to have children. Like, yes, traditionally that's been the norm for women. Having children doesn't define a woman, which I agree with. There is some truth in that. It isn't the ultimate pinnacle of womanhood.
Yeah, I think this is what she's had to tell herself because she's struggling to have kids. I think she's Kirsten especially, but they've both
Mhm.
had to kind of roll it back because it's not working out how they thought it would. But they're still saying that Chelsea Handler has absolutely no right to champion the child-free movement, which isn't really a movement because we're not out here giving out pamphlets telling you
What's her
not to
name?
have kids. Chelsea Handler. This is who the Christians come after when someone on the
Mm.
left tries to devalue their beliefs.
Well, she's more than, like, she's more than entitled to her views on
Mm,
things. I don't
right.
think, she's obviously not saying that nobody should have children. She's obviously saying
Mhm,
that you can have children and still be a productive and essential part of the community and part of society.
mhm,
It just sounds like to me that these people are saying, well, you can't be a woman or a girl, if whatever they're defining, and be a valuable member of society if you're not
mhm.
wanting kids.
Right. I mean, I've come across more and more things just online about it, and again, it's always the Christians, or it seems to be always the Christians attacking people like her, but she's just
Yeah.
become another target for that right-wing pundit nonsense as well.
Chelsea Handler literally said, in America, and honestly everywhere, motherhood is treated as a woman's central purpose in life, as if our destiny is to let a tiny stranger rip a hole through our Pikachu, i.e., the lady parts down low, from the inside out. Childless women are seen as unfulfilled, unhappy. Even the Pope has slammed us, saying that not having children is selfish. It's important to know when you don't have the skills to raise a baby. Instead of shaming people, we should say, oh, good for you for knowing that you shouldn't have a baby. And she goes on, just talking about this mindset of, like, again,
I kind of agree with that. You know,
Do you think that she's rubbing it in their faces a bit, or
what do you
what do you
mean?
agree with? Sorry, I've misunderstood.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
with Chelsea Handler. If you can't or won't provide a child with the care that it needs,
Mhm.
I
Why?
think it's responsible to say,
Yes.
hey, I'm not going to have a child.
Yeah.
If you're going to go, well, a child's going to be miserable with me and
Mhm.
I'm going to be miserable with the child,
Mhm.
I
Right.
don't understand why you would sort of force yourself into that because of what
Mhm.
some person's imaginary friend wants.
Yeah, well, this is kind of the problem, because then you get a generation. There is a generation of women who was sort of forced to have kids and had no choice,
Mm,
and a lot of that was based on religious beliefs. But the
right.
Pope also came out and told Catholics off for being irresponsible about it, because, okay, they're not allowed to use contraception, but he's like, we gave you a method, you still got to use
Well,
it. Like, we didn't say you just
still doesn't
keep
work.
having kids. Like,
No.
no, I can't remember which. I just remember a Pope at some point, um, that it was, they still had to be responsible about the amount of children they were having, because the Catholic joke is you just kept having kids because you didn't have any means to stop having kids,
Well, I'm
I
trying to
guess.
remember that method. It's a rhythm method, isn't it?
Yeah, the
That
rhythm method. Yeah, yeah. So,
time,
and I don't, yeah, and I know people who use that,
and it
but it's
doesn't work.
it's not foolproof, for
Right,
lack of a
right,
better
right.
phrase.
So it
But
doesn't work.
it doesn't. It's not. But versus something else, versus medical
Right.
intervention.
Like condom is 99.9% effective, I
Right.
believe. Like just
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
ridiculous. But
Right. And
um,
contraceptive, like pills, are a little less than a device. And but
right.
yeah, rhythm and temperature methods, which people still use even if they're not Catholic, because that's what they're comfortable with. That
Okay.
you can use apps purely for that. I've got an app that tracks everything, and it can track each cycle, and you can base it on that. But if you're trying not to get pregnant, I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend that for someone trying to get pregnant.
So the Mayo Clinic has 24 out of
Mm.
100 women who use natural planning for birth
Mhm.
control become pregnant in the first year.
Mhm.
So if first year failure rate is what, 76%
Percent.
effective, which is just
Mhm.
terrible. I don't
Mhm.
like
I
those odds.
wouldn't.
Not
No.
right, right.
But that's the only option some people have if they're devoutly Catholic or Christian.
Mm,
They don't believe in birth control. It
right,
doesn't
right,
make it any
right.
less real. But yeah, um, I couldn't do that myself. I trust science. Maybe I trust science too much. I don't care. I
Yeah.
I put my faith in a lot of science because it tends to have the better results.
Well, I mean, we do that for not almost everything else. We don't rely on, just natural methods for, you know,
Mhm,
car accidents. We invented
mhm.
seatbelts. We use them.
Yeah.
I don't. Nobody's using a rhythm method for crash
Mhm.
control kind of thing.
Right.
Like I don't.
Jesus, don't take the wheel when it comes to my lady bits. I will.
I got a sound bite then.
I must have. I mean, we even see in
Mhm.
the Bible. Who is it? Is it Rachel that talks about giving me children? Or
Right.
else I die.
God gave her the first one, Joseph, and then she's like, oh wait, no, before Joseph, she said, give me children or I'll
I'm really
die.
bad with the lineages. And
Sorry.
Bad who?
Sorry.
Wait, Rachel. is?
Rachel, yes, Jacob. So Rachel so she said, give me children or I'll die to her husband, Jacob.
Yes.
Then God gave her Joseph. And then as soon as God gave her Joseph, she said, the Lord blessed me with this one. Now give me another one. So basically, like even having one wasn't enough.
Didn't she use a surrogate?
Rachel?
Yeah.
No. Um,
Or was
that's what
Rachel the surrogate?
I can't remember the lineage. Like they got a slave to be the surrogate.
Yeah.
Yeah, like she's first proponent of surrogacy, I guess.
Oh no, it was Sarah and Rebecca.
Yeah,
But still
yeah.
Sarah was sort of unable to conceive, and she used Rebecca as a surrogate.
Mhm,
Basically,
mhm.
he got a child on her. So
Yeah.
mind you, it wasn't really a surrogate. He just used her to make a child. So
Mhm,
I don't
mhm.
know. Good biblical values there. If you can't have a
Right,
child with your
yeah,
man, get him to
mhm.
impregnate a slave. That's
Yeah. So, by any means necessary, I guess is what they're saying.
wow.
But
Yeah.
don't get a surrogate, and don't. Yeah, it seems a bit
Mm.
contradictory at this point. I feel like they're not following their own logic.
It does seem contradictory. Like, have kids
Mhm,
at any cost. Yeah, don't use. Yeah, it does seem
mhm. Yeah,
contradictory. But
yeah.
yeah.
It is so important because like someone like me and a lot of women that I meet, that I talk to, even many of you in the sisterhood that I connect with through Instagram, through social media, who are struggling with infertility, there is a desire in your heart for children, just like I have. And God has blessed us through adoption. It's been the most beautiful, amazing gift ever. But for so many years,
That's not what she said in the article you sent me. She
No.
basically said, you know, I wish the children were my own, kind of thing. And how much of a struggle it is to love children that aren't your
that
own,
aren't
which
your
is
own. Yeah. Again, I feel like they both try to talk themselves into their own belief. It's almost like
you
they're
think they're
just
convincing themselves, kind of thing.
I do. I think they've been brought up to believe one thing, and now they're sort of maybe compensating a little bit for the fact that, you know, that it didn't work out that way. I don't know much about how they were raised other than through an evangelical family, but it feels like they're sort of, yeah, they're not satisfied still, so they've got to talk themselves into going, well, this is fine, even though I didn't get what I prayed for. Um, but she's not taking the time to. What a lot of people have said about the both of them and their partners is that they're not actually going to therapy because, again, they're people who don't believe in therapy, or if they're going to go to therapy, it'll be like a Christian marriage counselor. It won't be like a secular marriage counselor because they're not going to hear
Right,
what they want to
right.
hear from a secular therapist. And I think they both haven't examined themselves properly. They've just rushed, or they've just gone straight into marriage and having kids, or trying to have kids without figuring themselves out and who they actually are. So I feel a lot of this is a facade as well. I find them so disingenuous in that sense that they're really trying to talk up
Sort of the
what they
perfect
believe.
life, or
Yeah,
a good
yeah,
Christian life, kind of thing.
yeah. And then trying to extol that onto other people. And it's like, but you're not even, from what everybody's hearing behind the scenes, you're not even living that life technically, or you don't feel you don't feel whole in this life that you're telling everybody else will find fulfillment in. So they just keep defaulting to, we just live at the service of God, and everything we do, if as long as we're sort of preaching the gospel and getting other women on, or getting other people into the faith, then, you know, motherhood's not as important.
So this is sort of the post. Adoption doesn't erase infertility, and that's sad. I feel for her under that. You know, she doesn't.
Mhm,
She had miscarried, obviously, which is horrible.
mhm. They're
So
really trying to
yeah,
just sell it to themselves that it's okay, and then they're disappointed, and it's like, well, go to therapy. Like, I know it sounds harsh, but you need to talk through why you've put that onus on a child to fulfill a certain role in your life,
mhm.
which is again why, you know, they'll say other women are using kids as accessories, but it's very blatant that Bethany was kind
Right.
of doing the same thing. So again, that hypocrisy of criticizing other people for doing exactly what you're doing and overvaluing motherhood, but you're saying we shouldn't be doing that, but yet you kind of are by talking like this. If you want to have a discussion about infertility, um, from a biological perspective and the emotions people go through with that kind of thing and miscarriages, you've got to listen to other people's perspectives as well.
Right.
Like
Right.
you can't shame a woman for having a miscarriage. It's completely beyond her control. Infertility
Well,
has
I
been
don't think she's doing that. I don't think she's
no.
doing that.
She's again she's tone deaf. If she's allowed to feel the way she feels, but she's kind of coming across as like, well, if you're adopted, then you're a, you know, or if you result to adoption, you've kind of just given up, or she's not being sensitive
Okay.
to that, I think, um, which is why they end up on these Reddits. It's why they get criticized so heavily. So, I
But
mean,
I can see. Look at this. I have acted in my wandering heart. My greatest longings can only meet one person,
mhm,
Jesus, and He is promised. So this is why we find it very, very hard to reach some people on their beliefs, because her entire identity is rooted in this one thing. She's not
mhm,
multifaceted. She basically her entire identity is rooted in Jesus, and so the question of whether, did Jesus rise for the dead is something that is so antithetical to even thinking about for her, because that
Right.
is her identity. It's very, yeah.
But it's are you using it as a band-aid at that point to overcompensate for what isn't going your way? That you're not dealing with the actual thing that you're unhappy about. You're just going back to Jesus in the hope that he'll make you feel better about everything. Is that what they're
I
doing?
have no idea.
I don't
I have
know.
no idea.
Yeah, it's sad.
But it's
I
just sort
yeah.
of I'm not happy with my adopted children. Only
Mm,
Jesus can make me happy is just sort
mhm.
of
It's your
it's rough to hear.
responsibility. It's shifting the responsibility onto something that doesn't exist.
Right.
Yeah.
But it does conflict with what she's been saying here in
Mhm,
this video. So these
mhm,
may be, or I mean, it is possible that she changed her mind, but it's
mhm.
definitely sort of conflicting.
Yeah.
years, I was living in a childless home. It was just Zach and me. And it was a prayer of our hearts. We would pray every day. We would ask the Lord for this gift, for this blessing that we see in scripture. That's a good and beautiful thing. But something I really had to fight against was not allowing that prayer for becoming a mom, for having children to become my identity, to become my idol, where here I am praying for a good thing, but like, what if God doesn't choose to give it to me? Like,
No, instead, as I said, they're using God as their identity or Jesus as
Mhm.
their identity, which
Yeah.
isn't good either.
It's not a good
Um,
replacement for that.
no, we want to have sort of identities that you know, we're not just one thing. I'm not just, a geek or just this or
Mhm,
just, and you're not just a writer or just this or just the other. People are
mhm,
multifaceted.
mhm,
But these, sort of getting your entire identity defined by one thing. I mean, it's your choice, but I don't think it's very healthy, to be honest with
mhm.
you.
Right. It doesn't it's not gonna pay off in the long run of those I mean, they're gonna raise the kids to think exactly the same way, whether they're adopted or what. I mean, they're just gonna
Mm.
put all of that expectation to
Oh, absolutely.
defend Jesus no matter what you do. They'll be the little Christian soldiers. Like, these I don't know, like, where I
Right.
think she adopted them from another country. Why is she not adopting in the US? Why are they not I don't even know why they that confuses me
Well,
as well.
generally children from sort of South and Central America are more Christian. I
Right.
don't know if that's what she did, but
Mhm.
yeah, don't know. Don't know about that one.
Yeah.
like where's my identity found? Am I less of a woman? Am I not a complete woman if I don't ever have that season of motherhood? Or does God have a purpose and a plan even in this? Even if he chooses not to give us children, I'm still completely whole in Christ. I still can be completely satisfied. I can fulfill my purpose as a Christian woman to make disciples, to fulfill the great commission of going far and wide, telling people about the gospel. Like, I can 100%.
I'm sorry, she's making disciples.
Mhm. Yeah. That's how they're terming it.
Oh, these poor kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. But not just
because
the kids, it said anybody that they can get their message out
mhm,
to.
yeah,
Like, I
because
get
I think with secular people. Sorry, go ahead. I didn't
no,
mean to cut you off.
yeah, I'm just sort of saying it's like, well, they're just living by that. Jesus told me to go forth and spread the I'm assuming that was what it was. They're just living by that notion. But to what
Yeah.
end? Like, just to get more people? Or is it to get more people to give you money? Like, is it an accidental grift at that point? Do you
Well, I
want the
don't think they
disciples to
question why.
no, as long as
I
that
mean, God.
person is
Well, God says it, and so you don't question why God wants something. It just wants
mhm,
it. But
well,
a lot of this is interpretations of the Bible. They say go forth and
mhm,
multiply, and things like
mhm,
that. And it's just a
yeah,
lot of it is interpretations.
yeah,
So it kind of, when they're sort of saying, hey, go to wiser people, they're sort of saying, hey, get interpretations from people that can interpret it
mhm,
correctly, i.e.
yeah, and
the
not
way that you kind of want it to. Yeah.
mhm, and don't question it. So you
Right.
want unquestioning disciples, yep.
Kids are still young,
homeschooling,
so-
well, I mean, the young years have their challenges. Homeschooling has its challenge. Any season of motherhood has its challenges. It's sacrificial. You're pouring out constantly,
True.
but making sure even in that it doesn't become my identity. Like, okay, now
Mhm.
I'm a mom. Like, that's my greatest purpose, my greatest calling. Like, no, I'm still a Christian woman first, and my ultimate purpose
Yeah.
does remain to make disciples.
Well, and it can
Ultimate purpose to make disciples. What happens if your child grows up and decides they don't want to be a disciple?
Then she'll probably cut them off.
Yeah.
Because I think apparently Bethany's husband, I need to verify this, I think he's become an atheist or has come out as atheist.
No.
Yeah, so that Bethany and Dav or Dave took down their Instagram accounts,
Oh.
and it's come out that he has identified as atheist, which I kind of don't blame him because he himself has his own problems that need dealing with outside of this, and it's not happening. So I think people have speculated on how they're going to go forward in a marriage if one of them isn't actually Christian anymore. And he was very young when they met, a lot younger than her apparently.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was another thing that was sort of background. I didn't want to go into too heavily because of certain aspects of that. But I have heard that he has struggled a lot with mental health in his past, and that very recently he allegedly, I think, came out as atheist.
Yeah, it looks like Emma Thorne has done something on it.
Okay.
Which I don't know.
Because that's bad for
I
the
don't.
brand too. Sorry.
Well, sure. Sure.
I feel for him particularly because I have heard some really sad things about the guy, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
No. No.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think these girls are particularly bad. I just think they don't question things, and they
No.
just, do what they feel is expected of them by the church kind of thing. So,
Mm.
I more see it as sad, really.
Yeah, it is because I mean yeah, like you said, they don't seem like bad people, just misguided.
Well, and it can be very, I don't know, disillusioning, whatever you would call it, where you're like, this is something I want so much, and then you become a mom, and it is really hard. Like, being a mom is not easy, and if you don't have the mindset of like, it is my job to disciple these children, to love them sacrificially like Christ, children can very quickly feel like a burden because they are hard. Like, it is hard, it's hard to take care of.
Weren't they just saying that these shouldn't be looked at like a burden, and then they're saying, oh, it can be a burden?
Yeah, I think they're like, it's because once they have the personal experience about it, they're like, oh yeah, maybe it is a bit, but it's still good. It's still good, yo. Like,
It's
just
like
have
this
them
idea
anyway.
of, well, it's not a burden because we're
No.
called to do that in our life by Christ kind of thing. And it's like,
Mhm.
yes, but not everybody is religious or as
Right.
religious as you. So they're going, hey, motherhood is a burden kind of thing. And you're giving them crap for that. You're basically saying,
Right.
how dare you say motherhood's a burden? And then later on, you're like, oh, if you don't have Christ, motherhood can seem like a burden. It really does seem like you're saying, you're trying to convince yourself it's not a burden.
Right. Yeah,
This is weird.
it is weird.
I-
Yeah.
I-
It's where the dissonance starts to kick in, and you're just like, but didn't you just say,
No, I see that
Yeah.
they've said, hey, people are talking about it like a burden, and it is a burden, except that it's for Christ, so it's not a burden.
But it's all in the glory of God.
Oh, sorry. I forgot the
So
glory of
it's, I don't know. Yeah.
Hard to take care of a tiny human that is fully dependent on you, that like,
absolutely.
I have a 3-year-old boy, and then I have a 5-month-old girl, and it is just he especially is figuring out his independence and figuring out his own voice, and it is hard sometimes, and patience doesn't come, and I have to say sorry to him and repent before God and even ask him for forgiveness because I lose my patience, and I get frustrated. I don't know if you ever do that with your boys.
I'm so patient all the time.
But it's hard. And so either way, like you have to go into motherhood, and you have to go into desiring children, I think, from the right place, or it can become very overwhelming. And I don't think in our own strength we are cut out for it. We do need God's grace and his just kindness flowing through us, and that servant-hearted perspective to thrive in that role.
Yeah.
But they just said, like, if you're not coming from the right place, like they hassled them for saying, hey, I'm not going to provide this kid with a loving and decent home, so I'm not going to have kids. And they said, no, that's wrong. But then they said, well, if you're not coming from the right place, it's bad.
They just completely contradicted themselves.
Right.
And they're not even catching themselves in that moment of, oh, wait, I think they've been brought up with an idea of what it is to be a Christian mother, and they weren't told how hard it could be by their own family.
Right.
And this is again because they're so clueless about other things. It's like they've actually experienced it and gone, oh, this is really tough, but if I pray to God, it'll make it easier. Instead of going, maybe I shouldn't have done this in the first place, or I need help.
Or the only way you can do it is have God.
Right. Like he's
so,
a babysitter or something. It's like, no.
Right. So it's sort of it begs the question, well, how did all of those non-Christian people raise children? Or
Right.
non-religious people raise children?
Yeah. They must have done it wrong because they didn't do it in a Christian way or a God-honoring way.
But they were talking about people used to having 5, 6 children. But I feel like, and maybe this is just my perspective, but I feel like if you said, do you want 5 or 6 children to Bethany here, she would say no. So that contradicts what she was saying before.
Right. So there's, by their own internal logic, they've just, I think if you honestly looked at what she actually went through on a day-by-day basis, she would instinctively decide not to have more kids. But
Right.
you've got to. But then she turns around and says, "But it's okay. It's something you've got to do. But make it make sense." I that they really don't have that critical thinking ability to nut out what they're actually saying, and it's kind of frustrating as well.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the modern resistance to having children as though they get in the way and are a pain in the neck is a sign of cultural corruption and selfishness. And so, if that is your motive for not having kids, no, you are not obeying Jesus. If you are viewing children as that kind of pain in the rear end and you want to go on and do your thing without the encumbrance of having to care for kids, then you have an attitude that isn't biblical.
Okay, so it's the idea that children are a pain in the neck is a modern corruption. That's what he said. But in the Bible, and I do have to find this, there's a way to deal with children that are a pain in the neck. I'll share this. The rebellious son, right? This is Deuteronomy 21, 18 to 22. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and who, when they have chastened him, will not heed them, then his father and his mother shall take hold of him and bring him out to the elders of his city, to the gate of the city, and they shall say to the elder of the city, this son of ours is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death with stones. So you shall put the evil from among you, and all Israel should hear and fear. So the Bible did have a thing of dealing with rebellious. And of course, you do have that passage that's spoil the rod and spare the child. Spare the rod and spoil the child, sorry.
Right.
Got that backwards. Spare the rod and spoil the child, which is sort of, beat your child if they but so when they say the Bible doesn't have an instruction, that it actually does. It's just that we would never do that these days,
No.
ever.
No. And maybe that's another thing, because they're skipping over that too, because it's not
right.
It's part of the cherry picking. I don't even know where you would find how to treat a child well in the Bible. I mean, it's got to be in there somewhere. It just seems to be a lot of smack them until they behave.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, there's no show your child patience for the mistakes that they make and be forgiving. It's always, just keep. Yeah, I just don't feel like there was any sort of compassion for kids, I guess.
Even sort of, so there's a few stories in there, sort of one, children make fun of a bald man and God has she-bears rip them to death kind of thing. Like, there's a lot of and there are passages that sort of, discipline your child but not harshly kind of thing, but their idea of harshly and ours were vastly different,
Right.
and they lived in a time where sort of punishing a child with corporal or even capital punishment was not a great big deal to them.
No, it was just
Um,
another sin, sort of. They treated all of
right,
it.
right.
Okay.
That if a child was going to bring sin into the tribe, because they really, at this point in the Old Testament, they really are tribal. You've got to purge that sin from you. You've got to get rid of the child. Now we sort of look at it as, well, we don't have to do that. We can
No.
rehabilitate people. We can correct children. We can do all of this other stuff. But
Yeah.
obviously they didn't know that because they had no
No.
idea.
Yeah. But it doesn't seem to me that these two would be the type to hit a kid either. But it's like they don't know what to do with their own frustration with a kid, except they're just kids are frustrating. So it's
Yeah,
like,
I don't think
yeah,
I don't think they would veer away from that. That's my opinion.
no,
Of course, that's just opinions. We don't have any real knowledge of that.
not that I'm aware.
But
No.
um,
But it's like
yeah,
almost it feels like with them, if it's not written somewhere explicitly in this book, then you just have to ask Jesus because there's nowhere else to find that information on how to discipline a kid. Like the internet doesn't exist, and child therapists and pediatricians don't exist. Like
right, right.
there's not a wealth of information outside of this book that you've got to examine because
Sure.
it's all secular, so you're not allowed to look at it again. Like, no, I think your kids are going to grow up needing therapy because you yourselves have not self-actualized. But that's my perspective. But I mean, a lot of people have kids and they don't do all of that. Like they just they have kids, but they don't worry so much about the consequences either. They just they just raise a family and they seem to do okay. Um, Again, I don't think these two in particular know what the solution is outside of their own religion. So they've kind of got together and, "Oh, we wanna talk about all of these things," but they don't really provide any kind of answers to anything other than
Their
getting the
own
podcasts.
resources
Yeah, yeah, their own
and
resources,
their
which
own
just they
resources. Yeah.
yeah, like they're just peddling their own information, which is completely is huge deficit yeah, there's nothing
I, I,
substantial in
I
there.
mean, I have my own opinions on this kind of stuff, but I would
Mm,
never like peddle a resource to people as an expert on the subject. I may have my
no,
own opinions, but I would
mhm,
never claim to be an expert on any of the stuff that I talk
no,
about because I'm not.
no.
Um,
It's audacious in of itself to think that you've got the answers to stuff like that,
mm,
and I
yeah.
think they feel like they've got to provide all of this information that's not based on any other reality other than theirs, which is a mess.
Well, do we know how sort of child therapists and actual parenting experts are reacting to them?
Um, it's interesting. I'm not 100% sure. All I heard was they might have gone to marriage or sex therapists that had a history of bad behavior. That's all I kind of know, that the people that they do seek professional guidance from themselves aren't particularly are already kind of damaged themselves. They just live in their own communities. So again, if they're going to go to a therapist, they're going to go to a religious therapist before they go to a
Mm.
secular one, and that's again probably not the best place to go. So
I'm just looking down now at YouTube.
mm,
A few therapists have responded to them.
mhm.
Um, yeah, one saying you've got to stop saying crazy girl emotions kind of thing.
Mm,
Like, oh dear. Yeah, no, they're not getting a good review from actual therapists.
no,
We are free in Christ to choose marriage or to stay celibate, service for his glory, talking about for God. So we can choose marriage or we can choose to stay single, but it's for God's glory.
so if are you skirting around joining a convent if you can't get married? Is that what you're
I don't
trying
know.
to say? Because it's just
It's weird.
implied by that. Like, if you're not going to get married, then you're not allowed to have sex?
Well, I would imagine that's what they would believe, right?
Right, or else you're just a
I
harlot.
mean, well, I mean, but celibacy and chastity are two totally different things. Celibacy
Yes,
is not
correct.
getting married. Chastity is
Yeah,
not having sex at all. So,
yeah,
what you're saying there isn't remaining celibate, it's remaining chaste.
right.
I guess celibate and chaste, like
Yeah,
burr.
yeah. Because chastity is prior to marriage. Like I'm assuming that's, you remain chaste until marriage
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
rule. So if you don't get married,
You
then
don't
that's it. You
have,
you can't.
and you can't masturbate. So you're
Right, and you can't. You got to take that away from me.
well, better hope you're asexual at that point,
Well, that
because
point, and
holy
and a
crap.
romantic and not wanting any of it, which I'm completely fine with, and I
Well,
think
that's
that
true.
it's
Yeah.
totally great that people are asserting that. I totally support the asexuals and the aromantics. Be
Yeah,
out there, so just make your voices heard. You do not
sure.
need all of this to be happy. I swear you don't.
Right.
But if you want to, if you change your mind about that too, I
It's
mean,
all good. Yeah,
it's
it's fine.
humanism to just let it go, let it be.
But sort of not getting married because you choose
Mm,
that, and then wanting to do something
mhm,
sexual and not because you think God will
mhm,
big
mhm.
frown on you.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Like, I
Mhm,
totally get that asexual people and aromantic, that
mm,
they don't want that, the urges aren't in, and
mhm.
totally
Yeah,
understandable. But we're
yeah.
talking about people who do want that but
Mhm.
are not allowed to because their
Right.
imaginary friend says that
Mhm.
they can't.
Sacrificing my desires just like Christ did for the good of others. And that is the opposite
Yeah.
message that we will hear in society. Again, we have to be intentionally soaking in these truths, soaking in this gospel perspective, or we will buy into the lies that our singleness, that our mother, our marriage, every season is about our desires, our goals,
Yeah.
our bucket list, our careers, like whatever it is, ourselves, first and foremost, will take center stage every single time. That's our flesh, that's our sin, that is my natural default, that is our natural default. So unless we are intentionally
sure.
growing in Christ's likeness, which is that sacrificial love pouring out for the good of others, then it's just not going to happen. And one
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is kind of really, really weird.
Yeah.
Um, no, I don't
It
know.
yeah, so it's okay to be single, but you've got to be single in service to God.
Right.
Is yeah, so
Everything is service to God.
where he talked about so often the reason we don't say yes to something. For me, it was adoption. For you, it might be saying yes to having kids, is because we're scared of how hard it's going to be.
Mm.
And we view the hard as bad. But he went on to say that the hard isn't bad. It sanctifies us, it grows us, it gets us to think about someone other than ourselves. When we pour out, we are more like Christ. And it's in that crucible, in that challenge, in that valley, in that trial that God grows and changes us. And that's exactly what Candace Waters says here. She says, by God's design, one of the primary ways he changes us is through the crucible of marriage and family. Being changed, transformed through being a wife, and then, if he wills, a mother, is evidence of his kindness. He could have designed any number of ways to cut away our sin and burn away our dross. Often,
Guess what? You can do that without a God.
right.
Like, there's plenty of
Mhm,
secular and atheist people that have become
mhm,
parents and had the
mhm.
same challenges, and they
Right,
haven't had a God.
right. It's the universal thing is it's a challenge, but I
Yes,
also reserve the right to not take on that challenge
correct.
because
Yeah, that's
I yeah,
totally fine.
but that's
Yeah,
selfish according to them, that if I choose myself over the whatever
yeah,
God has intended for me, then I'm awful and sinful and whatever.
yeah.
So they're not
But
supporting
that's mm.
that's the same with everything. Yeah.
But I think because they've already said it's fine if you don't want children, but
Mhm,
you've got to be thinking, I'm staying single because that's how I can better grow the disciples, kind of thing.
mhm,
So they're
mhm,
not angry that you haven't had children. They're angry
mhm,
that you are not working towards Christianity,
mhm.
which is stupid. You're not a Christian. So,
No.
um, but I don't feel like this is just directed towards Christians. I think it's directed towards women everywhere, basically.
Yeah, they really, and this is why they sort of have developed this kind of, they're not valley girl, but that kind of sort of wholesome,
Mm,
very accessible to women image. Like they're not, dressed so conservatively and so demurely that they're not going to relate to uh, every woman. They kind of use these sort of, we're trying to make Christianity accessible to women so we can indoctrinate them to become like us and live in service of the Lord. Which is like, you can do whatever you want as long as it's in service to the Lord. How is that
mm.
that's contradictory in of itself. But they want mass market appeal, and they didn't get it, and they had to beg for it. But they kind of got popular because people were making fun of them. Like, but people are more aware of them for the fact people were making fun of what they were saying, not for what they were
Right.
saying. And
Mm,
that's how they got memed. And yeah,
right.
that's how I found out about them.
hmm
Yeah.
They're giving off some weird energy, some
It
very,
is.
very strange energy.
Yeah, and it seems very positive. Sort of
Well,
superficially, but it's not it contextually.
yeah, it seems positive till you actually think about what they're saying, and it,
Mhm.
it seems horrific at that point.
Yeah, because it does catch you off guard because again they look so, quote unquote normal, but they're not thinking. Normal's a bad word, sort of conventional. Like,
Yeah.
they hate society. They really hate. They probably sit there on Instagram and TikTok as well and scroll through and see these people saying things, and then they get upset and they feel like they have to start a podcast about it or whatever. But they
And they're
don't.
homeschooling, so they don't put their kids
Yeah,
in sort of
right.
mainstream school
Yeah,
system. They're
yeah,
Mm,
they're very
yeah.
anti society. I found out recently that asocial and antisocial are different things. Um, but to be sort of against modern society because
Mm.
it's telling women that it's okay not to have kids. They're saying, "Oh, but it's okay not to have kids in the context of Jesus." But that's still
Well,
telling them how to think.
it's interesting because I don't think this religiosity has even been
Mm,
a mainstay of just foundational America. So
no.
the founding fathers were very secular, and
Mhm,
so it's very strange to see this nowadays
mm,
that they sort of wish to convince people that they have to have kids for the glory of God. It just seems
right.
so ridiculous, like we're aware of, and this whole thing of, masturbation offends God. It's just a
Mhm,
really weird thing to see.
mhm,
To apparently modern women on a YouTube channel sort of spouting these 1500s ideals kind of thing is
mhm.
is just so strange.
Yeah, but they're dressing it up in a sort of a modern facade.
Mm,
Like, just
yeah,
it's trickery. Like, it's sort of very disingenuous. It's like and again, you wanna sort of dress the way you dress knowing that other very traditional women would find you, like,
right,
unconventional and sinful.
right,
Like, there's women who would be judging them on their appearance and their
yeah, for
attitude.
their makeup, and yeah,
Right,
absolutely,
yeah, and
yeah,
because they're the evangelical American Christian woman who still
mm,
wants to appeal to that wider audience. Like, again, Abby Shapiro is very similar from what I've seen.
right,
She's really trying to get those women back on board, and that's why they're so anti-feminist. And that's
mm,
coming from me, who doesn't fully identify as a feminist. I don't. This is not. They hate feminism. They're just another brand of people who hate feminism, um,
yeah,
because that's selfish. Like, not having kids and then living for yourself and doing your own thing. It's You still have to be a selfless person even though you're not necessarily having kids. But I don't see them as selfless. I don't see what they're doing as selfless,
right.
because if they were truly selfless, they wouldn't be promoting their Patreon. How is that not technically in service of themselves? Oh, no, they get to wind it back into being in service of God, because
Mhm.
ultimately, if we can, like, I get it from that perspective, but it's not. It's in service of you and the fact that you've created this business that isn't as profitable as you wanted it to be. So you're selling these packages to people. Like, make it make sense. I don't know. It's
Well, I
irritating.
mean, they even sell public speaking engagements, and they don't
Mm,
seem like great public speakers. I wouldn't say that I'm a great public
no,
speaker either,
no.
but they seem, sort of like two housewives talking,
Mhm,
not
mhm.
sort of what you'd expect out of. But I could be wrong. They could be
No,
amazing. I haven't seen
yeah,
them publicly speak, but
no, but that's
um,
revenue for them.
right,
Yeah.
right,
Often in the routine of his creation, he uses the sweetness of marital and filial, I don't know, we're talking about like
I was talking to an older couple. They have been married for many decades. And Dave and I actually asked them, we were like, oh, so, what would be your advice for us as a couple? Like, you've been married so long and y'all are so happy and you so like each other and you have so much fun together. And their advice literally was like, keep having babies. And I was like, yeah, I mean, we're going to try. I'm 34. We've had a couple miscarriages, and they were like, it's so worth it. Like, they had as many as they could, but they were like, it's so worth it. Like, have as many as you can. And I just thought that was so interesting.
That's
that
sweet.
was.
That's a wonderful anecdotal quote.
Mhm,
Lots of
mhm,
people keep having babies and they break
mhm,
apart. So do we
mhm.
count them?
Yeah, because I have heard people who were just like had a kid to try and save the marriage, and the marriage fell down anyway.
Correct. Yeah.
So
So this is just anecdotal cherry picking of data. You're just saying, hey, I
yeah,
met this person and they stayed
mhm,
together because they had kids. Great. What about all the
like
ones that didn't?
yeah, like in your country specifically has was like the leaders in divorce or something, and statistically among Christians more than atheists, I guess. I mean, you're probably better at finding the numbers on that than.
Yeah, I think um they get married younger, and
Mhm,
younger marriages definitely have a higher rate of divorce. So I think it
mm,
is that they get married younger is more that what does it than just the fact that they're Christian essentially.
mhm, yeah,
That if atheists get married younger, they divorce at higher rates as well. But
right,
just the fact that the religious people are sort of meeting somebody and they get married incredibly young.
mhm,
They don't wait until they're 25 where they get married at 18 kind of
yeah,
thing
yeah,
is the problem.
yeah, and they sort of marry within their own communities and stay as sheltered as possible.
Mm.
I mean, I feel like genuine fundamentalists, I find it very strange that they would use the internet to peddle this stuff, because I thought that was kind of ungodly as well. I don't know.
Mhm.
Like, um, someone would say that, them having all of this equipment and having the freedom to run their own website and their own YouTube channel would be selfish.
Yeah, so I'm just looking at the Pew Research Center now.
Mm,
So the
mhm,
highest one among anybody is the historically black Protestant at 19%, are
mhm,
divorced, separated. Unaffiliated or atheist, no religious, is only
mhm.
11. It's not actually that
Okay.
high. Orthodox Christian is 9, Muslim is 8, Mormon
Mhm,
is 7. It's very
mm,
low.
mhm,
But things like sort of mainline Protestants are 12%, and
mm.
Jehovah's Witnesses are 12%, and Catholics 12%. So that's
Is
higher. And evangelicals, which these
mm,
girls are, is actually
yeah,
14%, right?
right.
So it's 3% higher than the atheists.
Mhm.
So it's kind of
That's just
but
divorce rates.
well, it can be misleading because
Mm.
atheists have a high rate of sort of living with a partner but never actually married kind of thing. And
Right.
they've got a much higher rate of never married in the first place. So obviously you can't
Mhm.
be divorced if you never marry. So it can
Right.
be a bit misleading. But at the same time, you can't say that atheists divorce at a higher rate. They don't.
No, no. But I'm assuming Mormons don't, because, again, they trap people and don't agree with divorce, if you're
Yeah,
factoring in that as
yeah.
well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the fact that religions sort of they strenuously, especially evangelical Protestants, the
Mm,
evangelicals strenuously say that divorce is a sin and should only be done
mhm,
as a last resort.
mhm.
The fact that their divorce rate is higher than atheists is problematic. It's a problem
Yeah,
for them.
yeah. So this is more like propaganda to keep families intact regardless
Well,
of whether that's.
yeah, no, this is just
Yeah.
her. This is confirmation bias. She meets a
Yeah.
person, they say it had a lot of kids. That plays into what she believes is true. She
Mhm,
takes it as evidence that
mhm,
having kids keeps the marriage going longer. So she confirms her bias. If she runs into somebody that says, "Oh no, we had kids, and um, it didn't save my marriage," it instantly
mhm.
flies out of her head. She doesn't remember it. So it's just
Right. Yeah.
confirmation bias.
Yeah, but I'd say she surrounds herself with married couples. It's
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what their friendship groups are like, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, at least one's an atheist now. Good on you, Dave.
That
Sweet.
was their advice. I want to wrap this whole thing up with some quick bullet points of 5 good reasons to have babies. Again, this is from Candace Waters. Like, we have loved
so
so
good.
much on what
I
she
didn't
has.
know who Candace Waters is. I looked her up. Apparently, she's just a sort of writer, and she founded, I think, Boundless. I don't know who she is or why we should listen to this person.
No, I'm wondering if she's the person that I was thinking of when they were talking about going to a marriage therapist. Yeah, she does devotionals as well. I don't think I don't know what her credentials are, if they even exist. She's the author of Get Married: What Women Can Do to Help It Happen. And then she founded this company.
Yeah.
She looks familiar. She looks like the person that they spoke to about for getting intimacy marriage advice, and she might have been the one that I was thinking of, but I'm not sure. But again,
So
yeah.
she basically she used to work for Focus on the Family kind of thing, which, if you
Yeah,
know,
that's maybe what I'm thinking of.
yeah, it sort of is a Christian family promotion slash parenting place. So
Yeah,
it's kind of this, you know,
we've got our own
um,
branch.
right, which sort of
Okay.
also it sort of as far as I know, and I could be wrong about this, but as far as I know, it sort of lobbies the government as well for good Christian family values, which,
Yes.
you know, um,
Yeah.
yeah. So basically, I mean, she's not even that big. I had to really search to find her, so I'm not sure why you'd be taking this person's opinion on anything. And I
No.
don't think she's a psychiatrist or any kind of medical or psychiatric expert. I think she's just an
No.
author and blog poster kind of thing. I don't
Yeah.
think she.
She's got no more credentials than these two have.
Right,
But they're all listening to each other, so they all, they
yeah,
become a network unto themselves, and they all say the same thing.
yep.
So again, it's confirmation bias. She's just going to who she thinks is a professional to say the things that she already knows to be true.
If Bethany and Dave divorce, is that her brand destroyed? Is that destroying her
Well, that's why
brand?
I'm wondering why she nuked her Instagram account. That's what I'm thinking. That
So
again, it's
she
not
nuked
being
her
funny. It actually
Instagram.
might be. Yeah. So she apparently took it all down. Like they both did. They both had their own separate accounts that they both took down. But if that's the trajectory of her relationship with this person, she would have to effectively rebrand. And I think that would be very difficult for her to do because of what she's promoted this entire time.
Well, there's a
And
girl-defined Instagram account,
yeah,
but
that's right. Yeah, I think this was Bethany's personal and Dave's personal
oh,
Instagram accounts. I think I went and looked for them and they weren't there. Um, so
mm.
that Reddit site I think might have a lot of information, the fundies.
But here are 5 good reasons she says to have babies. Number 1, babies are God's blessing. Like, that's how scripture talks about it. So we need to believe that babies are God's blessing. Number 2,
Babies are God's blessing. Were you aware of this?
No, I thought they were
Okay.
just like a byproduct of reproduction, but whatever.
are a part of God's good design within the covenant of marriage. That beautiful act of intimacy can so often produce a baby, and that's God's good design.
Um, but that can happen
That's
outside the
outside
bounds
of
of marriage as
marriage,
well.
right? Exactly. It
Um,
probably did before marriage. I think we were having babies before we get married, right?
Pretty much. And that's God's design apparently as well. So
Mhm,
why didn't he
mhm,
just
mhm,
design it so if you weren't married, you couldn't have the
mhm.
baby?
Right, that your fertility only kicked in when you put a ring on it.
Not married. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would have been a way better way to do it if that's what a God wanted.
Uh-huh,
But
yeah.
apparently he could not or would not do that. So,
Okay.
but I love it how, like, in the bounds of marriage,
Mhm.
it often results in a baby.
D Birds
Do you not
fly.
know how sex works?
I don't think they do. I'm not kidding.
Yeah,
There's a lot of gaps in their education, and it's not just the masturbation thing that's the issue. There's a lot of gaps.
mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Number 3, God wants the earth to be full of people. God created us to create, more people, and humans are the only ones that are made in the image of God. We're image bearers of God, and we have eternal souls. And so God wants the earth to be full of people.
He just wants little gods. Sorry.
Little mini gods running around. Yeah.
Minions.
That's creepy. Okay, number 1, that's creepy. Number 2, you're basically going, hey, let's overpopulate. Let's just overpopulate the whole. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got plenty of room.
Not plenty of resources though.
Yeah.
The 4th reason that it's good to have babies is because married couples are called to make babies, disciples of Jesus. We are called to be fruitful and multiply, and then to teach them about Jesus.
What, even the Muslims and the atheists and the Jews and the other people that don't believe in Jesus, we're all called to teach about Jesus.
Yes.
Woo!
Mm.
It's like they've never met anybody but another Christian. Like they've never met a Muslim who sincerely believes in Allah and Muhammad, like.
No. Very sequestered.
Wow. Yeah.
The 5th reason, and I know I'm flying through these, but these are kind of the bullet points to wrap it all up. The 5th reason is that heaven will be full of worshipers. When you have children and you train them up to know the Lord, they will spend forever being in the presence of God, in that perfect satisfaction, worshiping the Lord. And that's what it's all about one day, not like floating on clouds, like, oh, the Lord, but like we get to come down and reign with Christ and to worship and be face to face, a new heavens and a new earth as it was intended to be way back in the garden, back in Genesis. How beautiful is that we get to be a part of this kingdom work?
Wow, it is so awesome. You guys, this has been a fast and furious conversation. I know there's so much.
Yeah. I have zero reason to believe that is the case. Like, how do you know that? It's sort of this just this indoctrination that's coming through. Like, this is what's going to happen. What's your reasons for actually believing that? Because a book says it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, a book also says that if I worship Allah, I'm going to get 72 virgins as well.
Right.
So
yeah. Or it's good you like a book. I always say that it's good you like a book.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I like Lord of the Rings, but I don't think Gandalf's going to come and rescue me every time I get into trouble.
Right.
Thou shalt not pass.
More that we could say about this.
Though. This was great.
This was fire. I hope this is just the beginning of this conversation about whether or not, a Christian woman should or shouldn't have children and the reasons for that. I hope this just got your wheels turning and helped you to think of this question. Again, this is every couple needs to take this question before the Lord when they're questioning how many children, the timing.
Well, if you could point him out, I will, if you could just show me where he is around, because, he's not internal to me.
No, it's all assumptive.
I don't think this is the beginning. I think this is the end of these two. But I want to ask what your thoughts are and what you think about the whole thing. How would you wrap this up?
I try to be very careful about how I talk about whether or not you can have kids biologically, because I know it is difficult for people. I don't want to say that maybe there's an evolutionary thing to infertility, because I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know whether we've hit a point where maybe we hit a saturation point and then the infertility rate increases. That's very, very. I don't know if that's true. I don't want to say it's true, but at the same time, people who do struggle with that, they shouldn't be listening to people like this. I don't think that they shouldn't be going to people like this, because they're not going to get a realistic viewpoint of what's happening. I'm very careful about how I talk about my decision, but I will still stand behind it. I still stand behind it now. I don't believe that I have any imperative to reproduce. I never thought that. Whether I considered having kids at any point in my life doesn't mean that I want to do now. Um, I hear a lot of
Mhm.
arguments to say, well, what if your parents hadn't had you? We wouldn't be here having this conversation. I wouldn't exist to even worry about that in the first place. So it's redundant. What
Right.
if the people around you weren't born? They wouldn't exist either. So that's redundant. Like, what if
Mhm.
you can ask it all you want? I can't be offended by my parents not having me if I don't exist in the first place.
Yeah.
It's like I'm supposed to be insulted by that? No, I don't consider myself to be any more important than any other person who's been born. I
I
don't
think
think
it's supposed
humans
to be
are.
like a FOMO kind of thing. Like if
Mhm,
you weren't born, you'd miss out on all this life. And it's like,
mhm.
yes, but I wouldn't
Yeah,
be alive to be disappointed about it or angry about
right.
it or anything
Yeah,
about it. So it
yeah,
doesn't,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm comfortable with the concept of me not existing, and I
Mhm.
think it's. I mean, I know it's an ego thing to be, be scared of that, and that's fine. But replacing that fear with Jesus, it doesn't tackle the issue of what you're genuinely afraid of. And
Mm.
I just wouldn't go to these 2 for any relationship advice. I wouldn't go to them for family, marriage counseling. I would not. These would be the last people I would speak to. And it worries me that other people would, be struggling with something like that and think that these girls have some kind of answer to it, and
Well,
they don't.
it seems like to me you don't have to go to them for advice because the advice is always the same. The advice is
Mhm.
always find God, and that's going to
Right.
be their advice. It's going to
Mhm.
be, hey, pray and ask God. So,
Mhm.
which isn't helpful because 10,000 people can do that, and 10,000 people can get different answers.
Mhm.
um, I would, if we were having problems in our relationship, I would
Mhm.
like go to a relationship counselor or a psychiatrist, psychologist,
Mhm.
somebody with
Yep.
professional trained understanding of how relationships work.
Right.
Um, Thankfully, we've never had to do that, but
No.
it's not like we haven't had differences or
No.
disagreements in the past.
And I think
Um,
what they're not looking at as like you see marriage. I don't subscribe to the idea of marriage being a completionist thing. You should be coming to a relationship as complete a person as you could possibly be, and the person you
right.
marry complements you. They don't complete you. And I
Hmm.
firmly believe that if you're going to subscribe to something like a soulmate mentality or a perfect person mentality, that doesn't have to be the person you marry. A soulmate, you can have multiple soulmate. This it sounds wooey, but I think you can have that kind of connection with all sorts of people. You're limiting
Sure.
yourself to marriage. You should be just around people that look after you, and you want to look after them, and create your own family. Family. That's that spaced quote. The family of the 21st century is made up of friends. I do actually believe that because
Yeah,
we have a
same
lot
here.
of a lot of people who have like gone non-contact with their parents, and that's a huge thing now. It's you've
Mm.
gone and had these kids, and they no longer speak to you because you didn't love them the way you thought you did, or you just didn't cultivate that relationship because you were so fixated on something else. It happens, but they can't accept that their children don't speak to them anymore, and it's the child that takes the brunt of that blame. Why are you turning away from your mother and father? Not what did the mother and father do to make that child turn away?
Mm.
That's what I worry about the most, and I feel like the way to support each other is to be there for people who are struggling with that, not force them to go back into situations that will harm them or are actively harming them.
Well, it makes me scared for the kids of these two women because especially
Abs
if the dad's an atheist now, one of the fathers is an atheist now,
Mhm.
that if
Yeah.
their kids sort of go, well, we're not going to be disciples for Christ, we're
Mm.
going to
Mhm.
live our own lives and decide
Mm.
where our own aims are. I
Mhm.
can imagine how upset and disappointed and sort of reluctant to let the idea go that these kids are
Yeah.
going to be soldiers for God kind of
Yeah.
thing. It's
They're gonna be doing their own deconstruction in 20 years' time, questioning their own
perhaps. I mean, you
perhaps.
never know. That's the
Yeah.
thing. You never
I
know. But
They
yeah,
might turn out fine, but I don't think Bethany and Christian, I don't dislike them as people. I
yeah,
just I think from what I understand, they're a product of their environment more than
yeah,
anything.
sure.
Um, and I think they have reasonably good intentions, but again, indoctrination doesn't give you those critical thinking skills to really examine yourself and what you're actually saying, I guess.
Right. Well, it tells you what to think, not how to think.
Yeah. And I don't think you and I are capable of that, really. We're always questioning things.
Sure. But this has been awesome. It was a great video. I think that yeah, I get some weird energy from them. I get some sort of some conflicting ideas, some very strange sort of hyper energy. I'm not sure. Some of the things they said were pretty. I mean, I was taken aback completely. It sort of, you know, in modern life, I'm not sure that their attitude towards parenting is actually sustainable. Like, so they're sort of, oh well, they're questioning and they're hard to manage and stuff, and it's like, yeah, they're kids. But yeah, it was really interesting though, and funny to see them, you know, sort of. I'm always amazed by people that are so on board with this, that they're you know, they're just 100%. My life is for God, and it's like, oh wow, I don't. You're more than just a servant to, you know, a God idea. Even most Christians aren't like that. Most Christians are like, oh yes, I'm a God-fearing Christian, but I also enjoy this, or I do this, or I do this other thing. They're just 100%. No, everything we do is for God, and that's you know, you see that out of the fundamentalists, and you're like, dude, just go have a coffee, relax. You know, not for God, just be yourself a bit. You know, and drop this. This everything I do is in service of the Lord, because seriously, you need to let that go for just 5 minutes. But thank you so much. How have you enjoyed your first appearance?
It was fun. I think it was
It was fun?
Yeah, I had
Okay.
fun. Hope everyone else had fun. Or they will have fun.
That don't matter. No, I hope everybody's had fun as well. Yeah.
If I've said anything wrong, also sound off in the comments. I might have the wrong end of the stick with these two. Maybe I'm coming from a wrong, but
look, all of this is just opinions, and we have our opinions on them. They obviously have their opinions on us. I mean, they're demonic baby-eating atheists. I mean, wow.
Right. We the adrenochrome. We're all about the adrenochrome, baby.
Right, and we can't possibly be happy together. You know,
we masturbate in pools of adrenochrome. Yep. Sorry to be crass.
It's my Saturday night. Just
exactly.
But thank you so much for joining us, everybody. If you could give it a like and a subscribe, especially as my wife Lynn's first appearance, which is amazing, and I've really enjoyed. But yeah, give a like, subscribe, share, and I guess I will see you next time I see you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye.